is
He
what
also
TV
just
shows name is.
looks like a bunch of people like at that time.
He really does, doesn't he? He looks like a Dave
Oh well,
Duchovny.
fuck. He looks like Jerry O'Connell, his fucking brother. So yeah.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched. I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. My name is Alon.
And this is David, and today we finally watched Cruel Intentions.
What the hell have are you suggesting? Suggesting this movie to me.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the 25th anniversary of this movie, and I was very familiar with it when it came out. You know, there's a lot of advertising surrounding the kind of the leads in this and the sexual nature of it.
Well, it's like it's the biggest stars of that era, except for maybe like all this movie is missing is Matthew Lillard and Freddie Prinze Jr.
Well, they were busy with She's All That. And so was Matthew Lillard in that?
I didn't
I
think
can't
so.
remember. I know Paul Walker was, I think. We should just do She's All That. But I think this movie is like, it plays so much differently now. I'll just say this, it's not great. I think they like conceptually you have a movie that's like we're going to make a movie that's basically like about a lot of sex, but one, we're going to have stars who won't get nude for this movie, and then two, we're not really going to put a great story around it. Now, I mean, I still think there are parts of it that are like, maybe titillating and purposely for that era, and there's a whole
Oh,
step there's a
it was
hold up.
titillating, all right.
Yeah, okay. So there's a whole like stepbrother, stepsister like plot line to this, which I think was like that, and then the fact that what Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar kiss, which was in all the advertising, were like the two big draws around this. And I think the stepbrother, stepsister thing is now just like such a like a main storyline for like pornography now that it's like
Help me, step bro. I'm stuck in the dishwasher again.
yeah, they didn't use that, so this is not a forerunner for that. But I don't. I guess my main takeaway is like this felt like a very long episode of like Dawson's Creek. I told my wife she had seen it and she was surprised I
Oh,
never
that's
had.
funny. That's funny. Actually, Taylor and I were talking about it, and we were saying this is a very long episode of like Gossip Girl.
That's what I said. I was like, this feels like a forerunner to Gossip Girl. And she's like, well, no, I mean, but then like Gossip Girl is playing on like kind of the same like Bridgerton type thing, right? And
Well, it's
this
like a
is
high society versus low society, and it's a lot of stuff is actually really similar to Gossip Girl.
well, yeah, because he's writing a diary, and that's like the classified ad like gossip column stuff that is
Right.
in that and Bridgerton. This is based off like a book from the 1700s, which was made into a movie in the 1980s. I
Cruel
guess
intentions.
the doctor from the beginning was in both movies.
Both which movies?
Dangerous Liaisons from 1988, and then this one.
Oh, okay.
Which the only thing I'd ever seen her before this was Liar Liar, which she's fucking great in. That's like
Right.
the thing I remember her from.
I swear, I really thought she was going to come back in the end somehow. But the funny thing with this movie is that I was 7 years old when this came out, right? So there's no way in hell that I would have seen this when it first came out. But I think this movie has been parodied and copied so many times in the early 2000s that having never seen it, but being familiar with all the other work that it's based off of, or that the other work has based itself off of this, I was just like not surprised at anything except maybe one or two things that I'm sure we'll get to. But I do want to just take a moment and say, this is so similar to Mean Girls in so many ways, from the burn book to getting hit by the car to like high society versus low society, and it takes place in a high school. Except for this is like the summer break between school. And then I can't not mention this is Not Another Teen Movie, that I have seen Not Another Teen Movie, and the direct parody from this. I have seen like reels, like clips of Not Another Teen Movie and Cruel Intentions, and at moments I could not tell the difference between what was parody and what was like the movie.
Yeah. The other thing about this movie is like it sort of it doesn't play with the line. It like fucking crosses it over and over again, whether it's campy or bad acting.
Sure.
Because it's definitely going for campy, but in certain parts, it's just like I think, and so Ryan Philippi, whatever. I think people have been arguing how to pronounce his name since this, like before this movie came out, and I didn't look it up. Um, he's been in other things that I like. The movie Antitrust is one that eventually we'll do on this podcast that I really like. But his acting in this movie, the whole time I was like, is it bad or is it good bad acting?
Or is it purposeful, like how he just kind of, not even how he talks, because that's a whole thing, right? But like how he
Yeah,
holds himself, like how he holds his face, how he reacts to everything. It's like this hoity-toity sort of vibe.
but he's like he's putting on an act for Annette, who's playing, who by the way was his like real life girlfriend and then wife at the time after this. But he's like,
Reese Witherspoon.
yes, yeah, they have
Oh.
2 kids together and they divorced in 2008. But he is like pretending to be a person for her, but then as the movie goes along, which by the way this movie's in 97 minutes, very quick, and there's multiple storylines that all interconnect,
It
which
did
is like,
not feel quick. That was the other thing, is that everything was so intricate and so like
yeah,
spiderweb together that I got to like an hour into this movie and I was like, surely there's like 5 minutes left. And I was like, how is there 40 minutes left?
yeah. And then you also, after watching this, like very clearly, Hayden Christensen, when he was preparing for Star Wars Episode 3, was like, I want to talk like Ryan Felipe
Yes.
from Cruel
Do you
Intentions.
know if he was ever optioned to be in this movie?
I don't know. I didn't see that. The only alternate casting was, there's just one that I saw, which I think would be interesting. We'll talk about it at the end. Um, but like back to his acting, Ryan Felipe's. So like at certain points, we're supposed to believe that he's like actually falling for this girl, but his acting, like I can't tell when he's doing something. Is he putting on an act at that point,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
the veneer been taken off and this is what he's really frustrated with her? And then like, and once again, I don't blame him for it because I've seen him in other things where he's fine. But in this, I was like, I don't know what the director's going for when you're telling him to do a certain thing. And everyone's acting in this sort of hyper,
Yes.
over the top way, but his is such that I don't. It like like when he has the conversation with Sarah Michelle Gellar, like later on in the film, he's like, "I'm in love with her," and I was like, "Really?"
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel you there, because like I'm almost curious to see if this was purposeful, to see if it was just like, oh, they're gonna blur the lines so hard on his actual feelings that we don't even want the audience to know. We don't want, we don't even want that to be realized. At least not 100%. And also, it's like you have, so Ryan and Sarah Michelle Gellar are step siblings, and I guess these are basically our protagonists through the movie, especially Ryan, right? Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I think what's interesting is they're both horrible people, and they've done things throughout the movie, and they talk about things that they've done before the start of this movie that are reprehensible, like absolutely unforgivable. And it's interesting to me how, as we progress through the movie, he becomes more protagonist and she becomes more antagonist. I think that was kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, her whole storyline too is interesting, and like I will say that the movie does these certain things where it doesn't really spell out sort of her intentions. It's there, and I think it's obvious what the movie's sort of going for,
You know they're going to be cruel.
and that's their intent. Yeah, no, but like, what does Sarah Michelle Gellar want at the end of the day, right? And it's really she wants to be wanted.
Yeah, I
And
guess
with
so.
and like, I don't know, I'll just say it now. So like, she makes this bet with her stepbrother: either she gets his car, or she'll fuck him.
Anally.
Yeah, well, that's you can put it wherever you want. It's like there's only one place, baby, that he's going for. It's not your elbow. But it, like, when you watch the movie, and this is my takeaway, just my opinion, it's like I think she wants to have sex with him, like, clearly, but she's like, I need an excuse almost.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because his whole shtick is that he picks these girls that would, for anyone else, would be very difficult to have sex with, and he puts himself in situations where it would make them even more difficult to have sex with, right? Like
Right.
the therapist's daughter is probably maybe like an easy girl to have sex with. Not calling her a slut though, but the fact that then making that therapist your therapist only enhances the difficulty of this, right? Or like the sneaking around, and then the reveal that, and it's so funny too, because in the beginning of this, when he says to his therapist, "You have such nice legs, I'd love to photograph them," he plants that as knowing that that is going to be his recognizable calling card when the daughter calls her mom, right? He knows that is going to happen.
Yeah,
So
apparently
he
he's Sherlock Holmes, and he just lays all this so like that it'll happen right as he walks out.
No, he's not Sherlock Holmes. He's Moriarty. That's
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Well, actually, okay, I agree.
yeah, he's Moriarty in this sense. But what's interesting too is that, and he does it with Selma Blair, and he does it with Reese Witherspoon, and he does it with his sister. But then his sister, Sarah Michelle Gellar, does it to him. And so, like with the sex and the car and everything like that, it's like one conquest on top of another, on top of another, and they're trying to almost like get the better of each other. But how he sees every girl as a sexual conquest, his stepsister to him is probably one of the most, but then she's like looks to him as a sexual conquest too.
Right, right. And you're talking about the beginning. So the therapist's daughter is played by Tara Reid, and I was looking into this because I was like, this is the same year American Pie came out, and I guess this came out in March, and American Pie came out in July, which makes sense.
Wait, that was Tara Reid. Tara Reid looks a lot different now, doesn't she?
The movie's 25 years old, so yeah. I was like watching this now, it's like it's almost like stunt casting, right? Like you get like, having Drew Barrymore in the beginning of Scream is like
Sure.
oh, you have Drew Barrymore in your movie for like a little bit, and that's what this felt like. But then you look at her IMDb at the time, and she had done Urban Legend and The Big Lebowski, right? Where she has like just a very tiny scene in The Big Lebowski. So like this is like, it's kind of funny that you have her right before she really blows up in like the American Pie movies, to have this very small part. The other thing too is I was looking at Felipe's work, and I guess the thing that really blew him up would be I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that came out in 97. The next year he does 54, which is based on Studio 54, and then he does Cruel Intentions, and then he's like the shit. I know Garrett's eventually going to want us to do The Way of the Gun. Antitrust 2001. He's just like putting out bangers, up until
So
Crash
let me.
2004.
I know we kind of saved this to the end of the movie, to the end of the review, but let me just ask you now: did you like this movie?
So I'm on a big kick of like buying physical copies of movies that I like, that I'd
No
want to like
kidding.
put on the shelf, presentationally. And I'll say that at the end of this movie, I was like, I don't need to buy that. I don't need that one.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because I'm watching it with Taylor, and she just hates it. Like she hates it, and she almost it almost became like a hate watch for her because she just wanted to know how it ended, but she hated it all the way through. And I was enjoying it because I was like, surely they know what they're doing. Surely this is all on purpose. Like I'm not going to say that this movie was like unironically done, right? I was like, and we both agreed, and this is kind of spoilers to the end of the movie, but whatever, you're listening to this anyways. Um, we were like, there is one way, there is maybe two ways that this could end that would save this movie. It's like they either have to die or they either have to get arrested. And I was because at that point, and those being your protagonist and doing horrible things, basically just sexual assault all the way through, um, you you need the movie to tell the audience, hey, that's wrong. That's bad. And there's consequences for that, for those actions. And if they got away with it at the end, like a completely scot free, and the movie was like rewarding them in a certain way, you'd be like, wait, is this movie saying that this is all okay? You know what I and and then I think it would be a much worse movie than it is.
So if you, I I agree with your end result, but I don't agree with how you got there. Because I think that if you liked either of these characters, even though they do bad things, you would want them to get away with it. But Sarah Michelle Gellar is such a bitch in this movie, and Ryan Felipe is so unlikable
Yeah.
in this movie that I feel like you're like, no, I just need bad things to happen to them at the end. I need like retribution. Whereas like you
Yeah.
watch movies all the time with bad people where you're like, I kind of hope they get away with this.
Well, no, because they're not playing like a Walter White or like a Tony Soprano sort of thing, and it's so funny that it's Sarah Michelle Gellar, because Sarah Michelle Gellar is almost like this, just you love her in everything she is in, right? And so for her to play this character so horribly, I don't know, she plays it well, but the character is horrible.
I think she's the best part of the movie.
She's definitely the best part of the movie, and it's, well,
Selma Blair's pretty great too.
Selma Blair is pretty great, yes.
Reese Witherspoon, it's not a lot of hard work for her to be like the sweetest, most it's like, but she's fine.
No, yeah. No. But you know, Sarah Michelle Gellar is definitely like the thing holding this together, and I think because she's always so likable in everything she is, it ruins your expectation of her character in a good way, right? It's very like, oh, we're watching her do this now.
Yeah, and I think at that time she's basically, so she was in I Know What You Did Last Summer. She was in Scream 2 for that one small scene, and then she's Buffy, right?
Yeah,
So, oh, she's actually in She's All That. I mean, we just got to do She's All That.
but she's the most likable character, like the most likable TV show character as
So,
Buffy.
so I was having this conversation with my wife that
My
I feel
wife.
my wife. I feel like Sarah Michelle Gellar could have played both roles pretty easily in this movie, the
Who and
Annette
who?
role,
Oh yeah.
but I don't. And I feel like Reese Witherspoon potentially could play the Sarah Michelle Gellar, but we've never seen her do it, so it's like less believable. Which is the same position people were
No,
in
that's not
probably.
true. We kind of see her do it in Election.
Not to this level.
Okay, not to
I,
this level.
I'd like to see it. I would like to see them switch. The other one that I think you could do is Joshua Jackson and Ryan Felipe could switch their roles pretty easily.
I haven't seen enough of Joshua Jackson to say that. Actually, I haven't seen enough of either of them to quite have an opinion on that. But I'll believe you.
We could do the Skulls, Joshua
I-
Jackson, Paul Walker, secret societies at
Wow.
Ivy League institutions. I think that would be that's an interesting thought exercise on these movies. It's one of the few interesting things to come out of this movie is like, could you switch these parts around? By the way, this director has done a movie we've done on this pod and one of your favorites,
Okay, what?
Just Friends.
Oh, that makes so much sense too. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, I just want to throw a name in the ring here for a second. Selma Blair is probably playing the most un-Selma Blair like role I could ever imagine her in, because it's almost like she can't play the Annette role because that's almost not believable for her, but she could play the hell out of the Sarah Michelle Gellar role. I could totally believe it. But the fact that she's playing this character in this movie, it took me aback for a second because you usually see Selma Blair in these like really hands-on, full control sort of roles, and for her to be like totally played by all these other characters is it's kind of different.
Yeah, I could see her in almost any character in this movie, any female character. Don't want to pigeonhole her, but so your boy, the director of this movie, is Roger Kumble, and this was his first movie. He also wrote it. He then did Cruel Intentions 2, The Sweetest Thing, Just Friends, College Road Trip, Fury Vengeance in 2010, and then people have not let him direct another movie after Fury Vengeance. He's done a lot of TV work, including the TV movie Cruel Intentions. Maybe he's doing another one recently. I don't know. I've never heard of these movies. These look like maybe Lifetime movies. So yeah, he didn't take the capital from Cruel Intentions and really, besides Just Friends. I think Sweetest Thing is actually probably pretty good too. I've seen clips of it. I think we should get into it. So we already talked really about the opening scene, and then we meet Sarah Michelle Gellar. We meet Selma
Just about
Blair.
the opening just about the opening scene as his therapist is yelling at him through like the third story window, like being taken away by the security guard, and he's just picking up another chick. I That is so funny to me.
Yeah, well, Ryan Felipe at that time, he's a good-looking dude. His life was pretty easy for him. I like afterwards, he's just like, "Oh, it's just so easy." Like he gets the girl's number. He's like, "Just, uh." So he comes home and he sees Selma Blair, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Selma Blair's mom, who I know her from the Dr. Seuss movie.
Uh the
Jim,
The Grinch.
yeah, Jim Carrey's love interest as the
Yeah.
Grinch. Yeah,
I don't love the Grinch. What's really great in Sarah Michelle Gellar's introduction scene is that when she is talking to Selma Blair and her mom, no one knows that she's horrible, right? And so for us, we're expecting, oh, Buffy, right? We're expecting good girl, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and we get it. We get it. And then they leave, and then she reveals her true nature, right? Which is this raging cunt. And
raging.
yes, I use the C word, but I think it calls for that. And what's even more funny is like Ryan Felipe's character has this reputation, and he just basks in it. But Sarah Michelle Gellar's whole thing is that she's this horrible person who needs to hide it from everyone. And so
Yeah.
when they're talking to Selma Blair and her mom, and then Ryan Felipe walks in, her mom is like, "Ew, do not touch him, do not talk to him, do not have any interest in him. He's horrible." And then she turns to Sarah Michelle Gellar and she's like, "I'm so sorry that you have a brother like this." So it's just it sets up that whole dynamic perfectly.
By the way, the names of the three main characters, Catherine, Sebastian, and Annette, I think also like work perfectly. Even though the whole time I was like, I don't really know people's names that well in this movie, because and you know your point about like Sarah Michelle Gellar, our expectations of her. I think if the movie didn't need to market itself the way it did, that you'd be like, oh, shit, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's this nice person. But the marketing of this sort of gave away that aspect of it, and the like the kiss and the deal and all that. So it's like going into this audiences, and especially now, I think you and I both kind of knew the deal with her.
I didn't know to the extent though. I didn't know it was like pull out your crucifix and snort cocaine out of it sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, man. So
Sacrilegious much?
after she's done with that, she's basically explaining how she's getting revenge on this guy named Court. I don't know how you spell that. Is he Courtney? Is it Cou? I don't know.
I watched it with subtitles and it's CORT.
That makes sense. It's also a stupid name. So one of our 200 listeners is named Court.
And
But
and he's played by someone kind of famous, right?
was it?
Yeah, I mean, you see him for one time and you never see him again. But
You know, it's funny on IMDb. It's Court.
oh really?
Yeah,
I
and
might be making it up. It's fine.
it's
Um,
Charlie O'Connell.
it is Charlie O'Connell.
Oh, you're right. I like recognize him, but
I think he's more TV show famous.
I would never have fucking known his name. He
Yeah,
also
he's
just
more
looks.
he's
He
more
also
TV
just
show
looks like
famous.
a bunch of people like at that time.
He really does, doesn't he? He looks like a Dave
Oh well,
Duchovny.
fuck. He looks like Jerry O'Connell, his fucking brother. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we find out that Sarah Michelle Gellar's a bitch, and then Ryan Felipe is basically like, you know what? I am tired of sleeping with all these easy women. I need a challenge. And he presents the 17 magazine. And I love when you and I were talking about this before, and you're like, I just don't know why Jennifer Love Hewitt's not in this movie. It's like she is. She's on that cover of that magazine. And apparently they just found random Kansas City girls to talk about their virginity for 17 magazine.
What's even more ironic, coincidental. What's even more coincidental is she's coming to their school.
Yep, and her father is going to be the new headmaster, and so all of this of this virgin who the headmaster's daughter. It's like my ultimate bang before the school year, and then for some reason he's like he's gonna do this, and then Sarah Michelle Gellar is like, well, let's up the stakes, which to me. And I said this earlier. The whole thing with Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's like, I either get this car or I get to sleep with my brother, and it's like an excuse of like, oh, I had to, you know what I mean, in her mind, like because it's like what she wants. This was her idea, and he's, I mean, when he's like, well, I don't even want that, and she's like, you can put it anywhere. I was like, it's like we're all like, huh? Anywhere, huh?
You
Where are we
you
going?
you think that wouldn't be too hard to do to like other girls as a master manipulator as he is, right? But I guess it's because it's her specifically. He knew.
It's just the taboo. She's just saying whatever she can to get him to like agree to the terms.
Let's back up to Court for a second. Um, her whole thing, right, that she's trying to do is ruin Selma Blair's life because this doesn't make any fucking sense.
Oh no, no, no!
I just want to
It's not. That's
clarify.
not her. Her intention isn't to ruin Selma Blair. Her intention is to ruin Court, and she doesn't care how much it's going to ruin Selma Blair.
But how does anything she does ruin Selma Blair?
I think he's. Well, she never finishes the plan.
What is the plan? This is what I'm saying. She wants to manipulate
I guess
Selma Blair.
she loses the plot. She wants to get. She wants to get. I guess compromising photos, and they sort of play with the idea of the taboo of a rich white person having a relationship with a black person in this movie, but they don't exactly like they don't go
Well,
too in depth with the racism in it.
the only person who has an actual problem of it is Selma Blair's mom.
Well, except Sarah Michelle Gellar is banking on the fact that the mom's not going to want him with a black guy.
But I don't even think it's that so much as she doesn't want her with the teacher.
I don't know. I definitely think that was part of it.
And then a black teacher. Well, that's
She
all.
even says, and just the mom's like, and he's black, and Sarah Michelle Gellar's like, oh, okay, yeah, and it's his teacher.
I don't get Sarah Michelle Gellar's plan because if she's a virgin, right? But then she stole Court away from her. Court's not getting any, right? And so what's Court getting out of this? And then she's in love with her teacher anyways. So who cares? She's not even with Court anymore. And then she gets her brother to sleep with her. And so she's not a virgin, and his whole thing is to deflower virgins. And so that's why he's going on this whole thing with Annette. But he's already done this with Selma Blair. So Selma Blair kind of ruins everyone's plan because she's I don't know. She's fulfilling everyone's fantasy.
I think a lot of the B plot being the Sarah Michelle Gellar revenge on Selma Blair is lost in this whole thing. So the movie mainly focuses on the other plot line, which is not well executed either. But I mean, so at first she's like, I want her and the teacher to hook up. And this is what she says in the movie, so you can whether you believe it. She's like, I want her and the teacher to hook up. And then she's like, shit's going way too slow, so I need you to teach her how to have sex. So I need you to start fucking her. So he does that, but then at some point, Sarah Michelle Gellar starts sleeping with the teacher. I guess just because she can. Um, I don't know. And then at that point, we really sort of lost the whole Selma Blair aspect of this in the rest of the movie. So I don't know. I don't really know what that was. And I mean, the Juilliard teacher Ronald is really he's just plot device in this.
Yeah.
That's really all he's given to do. He's got a couple lines like each scene he's in, but like not a whole lot to work with. I mean, that's sort of everyone though, right? Like,
Well, he's also the whole reason that the ending happens too.
oh my god, that ending! I can't wait. We need to move faster so we can just get to that ending. The absurdity of it. So, Sebastian finds out that Annette is staying at his aunt's house for some reason, just another coincidental thing. So he just decides I'm going to stay there all summer, and he goes there. He immediately meets Reese and immediately starts talking to her about, oh, I read that you're not going to have sex. And then she's just like, well, I heard about your reputation, so, I'm not surprised you're like this. And he's like, oh, acts offended. And then immediately he's like, I have to find out who did this to me.
Well, it's funny because he comes in so strong. You're like, wow, for a master manipulator, this is not how I would play it. But then he almost acts like like he's going through his own character arc right in front of her, so she views him like, oh, am I changing him? And you're like, oh, is this a Moriarty type of level plan, or is he actually changing? Right? That's kind of like the acting thing that you're saying. Is like, wait, is his plan from the get-go was to do this, or is she actually getting to him?
Yeah. So then he goes to Joshua Jackson, who you're right is in 2 scenes, and he's like, I need to figure out. And he's like, well, I know who it might be. It might be the gay football player that I fool around with because they're both from Kansas City. And he's like, all right, well, I need you to call him over tonight at midnight, and I'm going to catch you guys in the act.
It's for I don't think you mentioned it. It was because she heard about his reputation from someone. He's trying to figure out who that was.
We don't need to explain the plot too thoroughly to people because 1, the movie didn't do it, and 2, like I don't think that's what they're here for. So then he goes over and catches Joshua Jackson. Joshua Jackson's character also makes no sense too because he's like the football player denies it. He's like, I would never do that, and Joshua Jackson's like, yeah, you know what? I don't know that he can write letters. Oops. And it's like, well, what was your plan? You just
I
wanted
think he
photos?
just wanted an excuse. No, he wanted an excuse to like get him laid.
Well, he was having him come over anyway. And then, Ryan
Well, then you're
Felipe's
right.
like,
It doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense.
Ryan Felipe is like, all right, well, I'm going to have to tell. Everyone's like, please don't. And he's like, all right, well, you got to do something for me. And the football player who's in the first scene, a meathead, who's like, oh, with his fellow guys, like, I told her, give it to me, bitch, is then on a beach with Reese Witherspoon. He's like, oh, yeah, he's actually a great guy. And like, like he's like much more eloquent. Like, I don't know what happened to that character.
That was
Did
his.
he just
That's his gay persona.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, he's more sensitive when he's walking on a beach. We also, Ryan Felipe's wooing of Annette is like he buys her a bag, and this is, I guess we can talk about her character globally. So buys her a bag. She's like, "Oh, this is so sweet, thank you." And then he's like talking to her more and more. She's like, "You want to swim?" And then he shows himself naked for her. And then in the pool, she's like, "The only thing you can hope for is my friendship." And
Why do you have such a southern drawl?
because I was doing a Reese Witherspoon.
Oh.
I don't understand where in the movie he won her over. What he did, where she's like, "This is the guy I'm gonna."
Dude, I don't know. Taylor and I were trying to fucking think think of the same thing, because it's like it wasn't until the end where he just sends her his journal, and then I think that's when she has the. It's funny. I want to talk about that right now. He sends her the journal as I've given up on this mission. You're right. I'm a horrible person. don't be with me, but I just want you to know the whole plan sort of gesture. And
Except he
she
doesn't
opened
say that. He says, "I want you to know everything, and then also after you've read all the horrible things I've done in my life, take me back."
well, but that's the thing, right? Okay, so the first thing is that she reads all the horrible things he's ever done, and now she's fallen in love with him. Makes no sense. And then she opens the book. Okay, this is how it goes. She opens the book. There's like a title page, like my confessions or whatever, and then she flips over open the title page, and on the left side is a picture of Sarah Michelle Gellar with like all the secrets about her, and then the very next page is a picture of Reese Witherspoon, which makes no sense because she's like it makes it feel like that entire journal is all about the bet, when in reality her picture should be at the end or like somewhere in the middle, and there's like supposed to be like 50 other girls in between.
Yeah, it makes it seem like it's not the journal he was keeping the whole time, or maybe he was lying about the journal until the bet. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So he finds out also that the person who wrote the letter is somehow Selma Blair's mom, who was so concerned that Ryan Felipe was going to try and bang her, that she wrote a letter to this Kansas City girl that she has no affiliation with.
Well, when you say it like that, it just sounds stupid.
Or like, I guess you're going to be the headmaster's daughter, and let me tell you who's going to try and bang you day one. Yeah, it's weird.
I feel like there's way more guys on that list.
So, so then also when Mrs. Caldwell finds out about the teacher, and she goes to him, she's like, "I got you off the streets, and this is how you repay me." He's like, "I live on 59th. What are you talking about?" And then he just basically yells that she's a racist as he's walking out, and like, "The black guy's gone. The black guy's gone."
I love what's his thing? He goes, "Oh, I'm writing something. It's called I Have a Dream." Oh man.
She's like, "I love MLK."
Yeah, I love MLK. Oh no, hold on. He says something about MLK and she goes, "He's my favorite." And I'm sitting there thinking, favorite what?
Black
Favorite
guy.
black guy?
Black historical figure. But there's a line where they wrote a letter, and she's like, "Well, how am I going to write one back?" And he's like, "I could email her." And he's like, "Emails are for geeks and pedos." Just like, okay.
You know what? In the 90s, that's probably true.
And then at this point, this is, I guess, the one little bit where you're like, oh, so maybe Ryan Felipe is developing a conscience, because he's like, "Hey, I want you to think what you're going to do to this girl. You know, she didn't do anything to you. She's an innocent bystander." And she's like, "Court has to pay." And she does this whole thing about how, you know, she's would be considered a slut, but she has to play it, you know, safe and nice and ladylike, and it's unfair that men get to do whatever, da da da.
Yeah, but
And he's
men
like,
men don't usually like set up sexual assault plans for other people to sexual assault innocent people.
yeah, well, and that's what we'll talk about. So the next real scene is when Selma Blair comes over, and she's like, "This doesn't taste like iced tea," and he's like, "It's from Long Island." And then he's like, "I'm going to tell your mother you're here unless you let me kiss you, and then I'm not wanting to kiss you up here." And it's like borderline rapey behavior, and
I don't
it's
think
like,
it's borderline. And it's definitely like assault, right? It's not like
well,
it's
like, are
assault.
you a lawyer? No, that's why I said borderline. I don't think legally he could get charged with the crime. That's why I said borderline. It's definitely bad behavior.
By the way, how old are all these people?
17 or 18.
Right? They're all in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I yeah, it's the type of thing that, like, I wonder how people saw this in 1999, and you know how people would see this now.
Not
And
good?
like, it makes you, it's definitely puts, like, the passing of time puts that character in a different light, where you're like, I think people who watch this, you know, especially like those young Gen Z kids that watch this today, are like, how are you going to try and like salvage this guy's character at the end when he basically rapes Selma Blair and, you know, in the middle? And there's even the
Right.
conversation Sarah Michelle Gellar has with Selma Blair. "So you're saying my brother raped you?" And she's like, well, not exactly. And she's like, well, he forced himself on you. Well, no, but and then she's like, but you liked it, right? It's basically like it's victim blamey talk, right? Of like,
Right. No, of course. And I think you're right about the whole Gen Z aspect of it. But even, well, not even like Gen Z, but like just watching it in today's age, you couldn't get away with it with the same thing you're saying back in 1999. And wha- wha- I think that's the pivotal scene is that, well, first of all, revenge porn is not good. That's horrible too. But we don't really like see that play out with the therapist, right? We see the tail end of that. We see the result of that. But for the Selma Blair sexual assault scene, you could easily say, "Oh, no matter what, at this point, anything the character does, I'm never going to be on his side." And I think that's why it's so shocking that you're like, "Oh, Reese Witherspoon knows about this and now she wants him back."
yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that, well, I mean, as you said though, like if it had been a journal of all his bad stuff, then yeah, she wouldn't have wanted him back. But the journal he gave was basically, it actually looks like a document he crafted in one night to make him look like the good guy.
No, it does. It does seem like that, which I'm now kind of like, oh, maybe he never changed, right? Maybe this was all his plan, just insane, right? But also, I think it's just what a terminology like what we would call now being problematic.
Slightly, yeah.
Slight.
So we have the retirement home scene, and then he has a conversation afterwards with Sarah Michelle Gellar. He's like, I can't stand her holier than thou attitude, but I'm infatuated by her. And some of Sarah Michelle Gellar's like, oh wow. She's like, well, anyway, can I take a ride in my car? And he says, the only thing you're going to be riding is me. Um, and then after that, he goes outside immediately and kisses her. And this is where like the movie just takes a turn for the melodramatic, and the music in this movie too is, it goes back and forth from like, I was getting like a Scream vibe from it, like the music was like kind of like
Sure.
peppy, moving things along, to like, oh, this belongs in like the really dramatic episodes of Dawson's Creek or
Yep.
the OC, right? Like just
Oh, the OC
really
is a good one. Yeah.
really over the top, like the episode where Ryan's brother gets shot.
Ooh, what you say?
Yeah, although that was actually better, much better than this. So, um, she, after he kisses her, she says, "I don't trust myself with you," and then the most melodramatic music starts playing, and then he comes into her room after this and says, "I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to the city, or maybe the south of France." And he's like, you're hot and cold, you make me feel inadequate. And then this line of like, you preach about waiting for love, but you're a hypocrite because love is right here and you're turning your back on it, and I can't be with anyone who's a hypocrite. And that works. She goes and locks the door and just spreads herself on the bed. What the fuck?
Now, imagine you're in high school, David, and you use that line and see how well that works. Although you're no Ryan Felipe, so
Most men aren't. But then he's like, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And he
so
shoots her down. And then,
so now it's like, is it his actual feelings?
then Sarah Michelle Gellar just shows up to this place that she hasn't been staying at to tell him, like, hey, your girl left 30 minutes ago. Which then cues, for some reason, they did it this way. So then he follows her into the city, calls people to figure out where she's being gonna stay, and then somehow with 1999 technology, figures out which escalator she's gonna be coming up to go stay with her friends.
Yeah, because remember, this is 1999 and he has no Life 360 on her phone. The thing also, there's this line. She does these like stupid little funny faces in the car with
Oh
him.
my gosh.
And so my favorite line at this point in the movie was "Oh my god, are you like in love with her? She made me laugh, okay?"
This was the scene where I was like, is his acting bad or is it good bad or is it bad good? Like what is and then towards the end I'm just like, oh no, it's not great acting. Once again, sort of blame the direction on this. And he's standing up at the top of the escalator, and if you watch it back, that escalator ride takes a little bit too long. Like she's riding up it for
Oh.
like like 5 to 7 seconds longer than you really need, and she's like looking away and like I can't make eye contact to the point where I was like, is this a dream sequence? Is he like not actually there?
Well,
And then he is.
also, she's looking down when she rises above that like that zenith, right? And so it's like she can see him and he can see her. And we as the audience knows that if she just fucking looked up, they would lock eyes, right? But is she playing like, oh, she doesn't want to look at him, or is she so like airheaded that she's just not looking in front of her? She's just looking down the side, like it's almost it should have been cut differently, right? It feels like she looks up, they lock eyes, she gets off the escalator. But the fact that they're withholding her looking at him, it just feels weird.
Yeah. And so then they have the sex scene after this because apparently she's just still ready for it. And it's so funny, like 1999 fucking gossip rumor mill stuff is that people thought that they were really having sex in that scene because they were dating, and that she like I think conceived her first child with him because like she became pregnant soon after that. I think like all this just fucking like
Holy
stuff that would
crap.
be on stuff that would be relegated to Twitter, but like was like people really thought like back in
Like
1999.
people got into chat rooms and discussed this. It's so funny. Although I will say that is so much sweat on Reese's cleavage.
An inordinate
So
amount.
much sweat.
So I think this is a good time to talk about this. I always have to reiterate my stance so as not to be misconstrued here that I don't think sex is or nudity is necessary for a movie because it's usually female nudity. It's usually just to drive ticket sales. But in a movie where the whole marketing around this is sex, the lesbian kiss, the stepbrother stepsister thing, the I'm gonna bag the virgin. The fact that there's no nudity is odd in this
Actually, you're
movie.
wrong. You do see Ryan Felipe's whole ass.
I think you and the people listening know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Why are there no titties? No, I'm just saying. I think it's odd that there's no female
Well,
nudity in this
you
movie.
see a very close. I mean, they kind of play with that, right? You see almost every of the main women characters in bra and underwear. You see an implied nudity for Reese Witherspoon, right?
Are you playing dumb right now? That I'm
But
not having the conversation
no,
of the
I'm
way
not.
they did it. I'm having the conversation of why they didn't have nudity in this obviously R-rated movie that is built around sex.
Yes, but I'm telling you, who would you show boobs of? Reese Witherspoon, Selma Blair, or Sarah Michelle Gellar? Because I'm pretty sure that all three of those girls, women, are way too high profile, especially in the 90s, to be showing nudity.
I think at this point, I don't know when the movie Twilight came out that Reese had already done nudity. Selma Blair has before. I don't think Sarah Michelle Gellar ever has. My point being,
Oh, they already did? Well, then why aren't they naked in this movie?
I'm not saying it the way you are. I just want to be clear to the people listening. My point is, it's odd that they didn't do it. It doesn't. It's not a thing that's required. I just think when you build your movie around sex, you market the entire point of this movie to the point of like fuck the plot. Like this is about the sexiness of the movie that you didn't have. Like you didn't have. It doesn't have to be one of the three main girls. You can have a tangential fourth girl that he bags.
Also, I just want to just jump real quick back to the Selma Blair scene, where he kisses her. You know what? I
Her
do.
vagina, Alon.
I'm too immature to say that word, David.
I know.
The the whole almost a porno aspect of this entire scene is like hilarious to me in the fact that they didn't they they almost follow like a porno script, right? She gets down on her knees in front of him. She goes, "I would do anything for you not to tell my mom." Like it's so cheesy and so campy, but it's like there's also this aspect to it where it's like, well, everything he's doing is not okay unless she knows what she's doing, right? Because she's like, what's it called when girls like boy crazy? She's boy crazy, right? She like sees him walking in the room and she's like going nuts over him. She's going nuts over her music teacher. She apparently did something to Sarah Michelle Gellar's ex-boyfriend. So she's like boy fanatic. So is it too far fetched for her to know what she's doing in that moment, to realize like, oh, and also I've had a fucking Long Island iced tea. You don't sip on one of those casually and think there's no alcohol in them.
I don't know what point you were trying to make with all this, but it just sounds like something that I don't want to be involved with at all. I back to the nudity. No, but I mean, like, I what I do like about the Selma Blair aspect of it is like, and I think the movie is a little bit trying to like, take away from the idea of like what Felipe's character does to her is that like afterwards she's like, I want to be on top this time, and he fucking throws her off the bed, and then she's like, oh, what you want? Want this or this? She's like, it's quiet time, and then she's like, well, how about a blowjob? You know what I mean? Like she's like afterwards just like not infatuated with him, but she's like, I like sex now, and you're good at it, and so like let's just keep doing it.
Pretty sure that's
Um,
not her first blowjob.
I don't think we see her. I don't know. I don't know. Why are you shaming her? Um,
I'm not shaming her. I'm congratulating her. Okay.
so then Ryan Felipe comes home and he basically walks in on Ronald and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I guess partly you're supposed to think that Sarah Michelle Gellar is like fucking Ronald, maybe to get back at Selma Blair, who's getting to sleep with Felipe, also to get back at Felipe because he's going after another girl. And she's basically like, I'm being forgotten, which is kind of her whole deal because Court didn't want me. And she's like, now I'm losing you. And so they kick Ronald out, and she's like, "So you're here for your, to set up terms for your prize." And then she even like puts her face in his crotch, and he's like, I don't, I don't think so." And she's like,
I'm
"What?
not feeling it.
I want to fuck." And he's like, "And I don't." And she gets angry, and she's like, "You're in love with her. You're not in love with me anymore." Um, and just loses her shit.
So now he's trying to like, okay, so he sends out his journal to Reese Witherspoon.
No, we're not there yet.
No, you're right, because he tries to hand deliver it to her.
No, no. So what? I mean, it's not exactly important, but basically, Sarah Michelle Gellar threatens to tell the dad, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna fucking do it before you can." So goes and breaks up with Reese Witherspoon by saying, "I've never loved you. I just want to have sex with you." And she's like,
Oh,
"Why
yeah,
are you
you're right.
saying this to me? Why are you saying this to me?" And then kicks him out, slaps him. Apparently, that was unscripted, and things got intense there. And so then he goes back to Sarah Michelle Gellar, and she's like, "Oh, let's toast my triumph over you." And she won't even fuck him at that point, but she's like, I got you to break up with the one person you loved. So she's just like full on C word, as you said earlier. I did love the line of like, I don't fuck losers.
You can say the C word, David. It's a safe space.
No, thank you. So then he tries to call her, takes the diary that I guess he wrote that night, and he just waits outside of her place the entire night. I don't know. Did she sleep? I don't know.
No, he hands it to he goes to.
I know he hands it to her, to the woman she's staying with, but then he waits outside Sarah Michelle Gellar's place all night.
I just wanted to talk about that real quick because this woman who she's staying with is having like an adult party, right?
For adults.
For adults. And I thought, how funny would it be if she accepts this package from this young man who's so insistent about Annette getting it, right? She closes the door, she turns around, and she goes to the rest of like her party. She's like, look at what this complete loser like gave to me. And they open it and then they read it, and then like the principal is there, like Annette's dad.
What do you want me to do with that?
I just thought
Alon rewrites movies.
I
What is that?
rewrite movies.
That's the scary movie version of this.
That's the
Not another
section.
teen movie.
Yeah.
So at the same time, Sarah Michelle Gellar tells Ronald that he being Ryan Felipe, hit her, and he's like, "All right, I don't really care about that." And she's like, "Well, I also have stuff about Selma Blair," which then sets up the next morning. Ryan Felipe gives up, starts walking away. Reese Witherspoon, after reading this horrible journal that I guess exonerates him, starts following, and then just happens to cross paths with Ronald, who's like, "You fucked Cecile?" Which is
No.
Selma Blair.
Well, what's really funny too, it's like he starts out with "You hit Catherine." He's like, "I didn't hit Catherine." He's like, "Oh, Catherine's just telling you lies." And then Ronald's like, "And you fuck Selma Blair." And he goes, "Okay, that's not a lie." Right?
So what I want to talk about is they actually filmed the scene where he hits Sarah Michelle Gellar. Ryan Felipe does.
Oh, really?
But then they're like, they didn't like the scene for other reasons, so they're like, we'll just leave it up to the audience's interpretation. But that doesn't, to me, doesn't leave it up to the audience's interpretation. We have no information that he hit her. So like
No,
in the
it's
version,
it just feels like she's lying.
yeah, in the version we watched, she lied to get Ronald over here. I don't know what her end game was on that. Probably just to fuck Ronald, I imagine, because she's losing all these guys.
No, she knows that Ronald's going to go after him. I think her intention at that
She
point
doesn't-
was to kill
No,
Ryan Felipe.
no, to kill him.
She knows that Ronald's going to kill him.
And she knows that Ronald's going to find him in an area with a high traffic concentration. So they get in a fight. Reese tries to break it up. She gets thrown in front of a car.
Yeah, can we also talk about how Ronald just absolutely throws her over his shoulder?
Well, he got attacked from behind. That's really her fault. And then, in an act of true altruism, of unselfishness, Felipe throws her out of the way into a different lane of oncoming traffic, but luckily she doesn't get hit. And then gets hit by a car, which would have only been funny if it was a "Ooh, what you say" played at the time. But
Yeah.
I busted out laughing when he got hit by that car.
Me too. Also, it's probably easier to like push someone out of the way with the forward momentum of you also running out of the way, not push someone out of the way and then just stay in the road in the oncoming traffic.
Yeah, but I mean, the movie's not as cool if it ends that way. Gets hit by the car. Doesn't look like that hard. Looks like he should have survived. And then he's like, "I love you, Annette. I love you too." Cutting to his fucking funeral photo. And I was like, oh my God, really?
So I know how this movie ended. I have seen this ending alone, like standalone clip of this ending. Like
Yeah.
I knew it was Sarah Michelle Gellar with Bittersweet Symphony playing in the background. Okay.
Bittersweet Symphony. Apparently, this song blew up after this movie too.
Yes, it did.
I can change. Go ahead.
So yeah, the Richard Ashcroft movie song is highly popular, but it wasn't "Ooh, what you say." Okay, anyways, although that would have fit too in this moment. The thing is, though,
when
is
he
that
got hit by the car, yeah, for sure.
well, even the funeral. So
then Ronald gets hit by a car. Then Reese gets hit by a car.
And then Sarah Michelle Gellar comes out and she gets hit by a car. No, so
Selma Blair's driving that car.
Basically.
Do you think Selma Blair can drive a car in this movie? Because I don't think she's adult enough to.
Like her character?
Yeah, I don't think her character.
Because I was looking it up and I was like, they're all like 23, 24, 25 in this movie.
I thought she was a little bit older.
Yeah, she was 26, I think.
Yeah.
Selma Blair was the oldest one, funny enough. So anyways, it just cuts to his funeral photo at his funeral. And I know of this scene. I know that he dies. But Taylor was very convinced that this was all a very elaborate prank set up by him.
It would have been a better ending. It honestly would have been a much better ending if he pops out of the fucking coffin.
I thought he was going to show up in the bathroom. Like I didn't think this. Okay, but I was like, "Oh my God, wait. Did I cuz I saw it so standalone. I was like, "Oh, did I misinterpret what this clip is?" And I was like, "Is the stall going to swing open and instead of Reese Witherspoon is it going to be Ryan Felipe?" And I thought how hilarious that would be. But anyways, so he's actually dead, which is just kind of insane. But like I said in the beginning, he either had to be arrested or killed for this movie to kind of work in the way that it should work. And so at this point, Reese Witherspoon has a completely different attitude than we've seen her in this entire film.
She's basically turned into like, yeah, Queen Bee. B for bitch. Like she's like, I'm gonna get revenge. And I guess an alternate way they were gonna end this is just instead of her printing it out and showing everybody, they were just gonna have her like hold it over her Sarah Michelle Gellar's head. I think this ending's obviously better to the point where I think it's the headmaster at the end, like grabs the crucifix and opens it up and sees the Coke and is just like,
Well, the fact that we don't know who that is, it could have been her father, it could have been the headmaster, it could have been, it doesn't matter. It just
I
works.
thought it was the guy speaking at the like when that scene starts, he speaks, right? Isn't it that same guy?
Is that the headmaster? Because apparently they made his funeral into like a school thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the new headmaster. I think it's Annette's dad. And just like looking through the book as they're reading everything, and like she's gonna get expelled at the very least, maybe prison time, or not prison time. She's rich white girl. She's probably just, community service or whatever. But drug prevention program. The ending is pretty great, but it's also just like this just felt like a long CW TV show is what it felt like.
No, for sure. It for sure did. And at the end of it, I do not want the physical media copy. I am okay with never watching this movie again. But what this movie did do is really, really make me want to watch Not Another Teen Movie.
Yeah. I mean, or she's all that. By the way, Reese Witherspoon at this time. I mean, so coming off of Pleasantville, then this, Election the same year, next year American Psycho, then I didn't even know she was in Little Nicky, and then 2001 Legally Blonde, Sweet Home Alabama, Legally Blonde 2, just fucking killing it at this time.
Yeah, absolutely blowing up. And I don't know if I ever told you this, probably did, because we've done a couple of Reese Witherspoon movies, I believe. Well, we've done Election. I don't know if we did anything else. We should do Pleasantville. I haven't seen it. So she was like my biggest childhood crush.
Interestingly enough, the person who was supposed to play the Annette role was Katie Holmes, and that was my biggest high school crush. Or not high school. I was like 5 or 6 probably. Dawson's Creek, it's like 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Oh man, so you love Batman Begins.
I was a pretty big fan of it. Dark Knight, a little bit of a letdown in that department. The lack of Katie Holmes. Yeah, unfortunately. So it started out when I was really young. Obviously, like a lot of people my age, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, but like Katie Holmes was like the big one. The studio wanted, just to tie a knot at the end of this point. So the studio wanted Katie Holmes, and Ryan Felipe was already attached, and the director said, "Can you get your girlfriend to do this?" And they met with Reese Witherspoon, and she agreed to do it.
I'm not saying our wives look like our high school or childhood crushes, but the fact
the
that
the hair color's the same?
the hair color and the eye colors, yeah.
Yeah, the ethnicity's slightly different on mine, but yours is white. So, yeah, I kind of feel similar to this. Like, I am glad to have checked this movie off the list because, like, it was such a cultural touchstone for that time. Like, this is like one of the biggest movies of that year, at least like from a marketing and just like people talking about standpoint. But man, it was not very good. Like, there's some moments where you're like, it had that Gossip Girl Bridgerton type bullshit feel where you're just like, you're watching like a soap opera and like the music played into that.
That's a good one. Very soap opera-y at times. I would have been okay without it. If you never suggested doing this, I would have been A-okay. Except now I do get a lot more references, like pop culture references now.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and we finally watched
Cruel Intentions.